Hello everyone, this is Dren001 and welcome. We're going to be talking about a thing I like to call
The true enemy of humanity is disorder.
utility class. Basically, in a nutshell, it's... I need to set this to default now that I think about it. But yeah, if you are on Twitch and you have any questions during the live stream, just go ahead and pop it down below. This is a default? Huh. But yeah, if you have any questions, just toss them down below in the chat or whatever side, wherever you're on it, and I'll answer them live. And then, of course, everywhere else, if you're on YouTube, then I'll get to you there as well. So, all good stuff. Let's see, does that... That's kind of a weird... Let me fix the crosshair real quick and we'll get started. It's being kind of weird. There we go. That's a little bit better.
You lack imagination.
There we go. So yeah, we're going to be talking about the utility class. So I'll answer any questions as we go. But yeah, and let's go ahead and get started with the definition of a utility class. A utility class is someone who doesn't, that brings more to the table than damage output, as well as pretty much anything else. The idea is that it provides a special, unique part to your gameplay and your team, and can actually result in some interesting strategies. So the most notable one that you can come up with on the spot is, of course, Symmetra, because Symmetra can, of course, she has a decent amount of damage, and this teleporter is actually pretty useful to move around your team. So in this way, she's a utility class that's kind of like a support. So it's like a utility support where you enable your team to do something. So like if we're running a Bastion, of course, a common thing that's happening now is you have the Symmetra that puts a teleporter and you teleport back and forth and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty basic. So yeah, it's just like, it's a character that has many different strategies off of it. I would suggest that Sombra is on that list as well, just because it's Sombra and she actually does damage. Usually they are like damage characters, but I think that there's many other options, which is nice. Did they increase the damage on Sombra? I got to test this out. Huh. Feels like it shoots faster. This is weird. It does feel weird.
I might need this later.
It's been a while since I've played Sombra.
Here I am.
So yeah, so there's all the utility classes, and let's just go down the line. Diva is part utility because of course she has her defense matrix, but you can't really create strategies off of it. The idea about utility is you have a strategy. Shields aren't allowed with it. Roadhog, nope. Winston, no. Wrecking Ball, I would say no. You can use them as a utility to like knock people away, but that's pretty much it. Ash, you can have utility hero in the sense of you throw the dynamite and you actually get value off of it, but that's not really true. Bastion isn't utility, he's just damage. Doomfist, damage. Genji, you have his deflect, but that's pretty much it. Hanzo is utility hero. So basically just because of this. So you have sonar arrow and you're able to actually see people. So yeah. I have to practice on Hanzo before I actually get to use him. Yeah. So of all these different things, but yeah, you have sonar arrow, can allow you for scouting, which is really nice. basically you would use this and just kind of like scout, help out a Widowmaker. So a lot when I say utility is it's not actual tangible value where you can measure it. It's more just like workable value. Junkrat with his traps, position with his traps is actually a utility because you can use it to catch flankers, which is nice. It's a small utility, not really too big. McCree, not really. May's probably one of the bigger ones because of her ult zones out. So she basically has a lot of tanking abilities, but she's not a tank, which is kind of very similar to Brigitte. Speaking of which, Brigitte is one. We'll get to that later. But I've noticed, because like I've worked with my team, and we've been doing some pretty massive things with Mei. That's been really cool. For starters, if anyone remembers the old Lunatic High Strat with Doomfist Mei, where they would basically do this, boom, and then punch him into the wall. And the big thing is it's not really about creating a wall for Doomfist to punch through, but it's about creating a split between a team. Like splitting a team in Overwatch is huge because you prevent them from supporting each other. So if you put a wall in between like boom and the support's over here, they can't heal the guys over there, and so basically your team's more helpful in that aspect and stuff like that. You can protect your team from getting killed. A lot of really cool stuff you can do, which is I kind of consider under the utility class. And then of course she can stall points with Cryo Freeze. She can block abilities with her Cryo Freeze, which is really nice. I've seen some people starting to use main goats to just stall, and yeah, that works. But what I've seen a lot of the times is running the Mei goats kind of like you would run the Doomfist strat with Mei. And basically you would run up, or the Zenyatta strat, where you would, instead of having it based on you stunning the Rhine, because that can be countered. Because for those that don't know, what you do in a... Let me switch to Brig so I can show you guys. So what you do in a Zen Goats comp is, let's imagine like that bot is Rhine. Rhine has a shield up, and we can't discord any of these guys because they have a shield. You stun, we put discord on him, and then he just gets destroyed from there because he has discord, and he can't get that removed that easily. So the idea is you just stun him and just obliterate him. Ugh, words. In a Mei position, you actually get to utilize another section of goats that people forget about, is Rhine's charge. And Rhine's charge is hard because it makes him vulnerable during it. Well, if you do this, boom, you charge in, he's completely safe because you've completely blocked out line of sight and everything for that amount of time, which is really nice. So you pretty much save Rhine while also having Rhine charge. This is so you can bypass the whole problem now that Brig can't shield bash through shields. So it's really great. I've really liked it. And mid-fight, she freezes an entire team if they're not prepared. So if you're pumping healing into Mei, she's pretty much safe. And so you basically pump healing into her, and she just spends the entire time doing this. It can't get defense matrix. It can get bubbled and shielded, but that's it. So if a team's running into you, you basically do a couple things. One, if you're initiating, you boom, wall behind the enemy, boom, punch into them, drop the wall, and then push through them, similar to how you would in a Zen Goats comp. If you're defending, they run towards you. They're running up here, and you, boom, wall in the middle, boom, boom, you take out half their team, you drop the wall, and then you stagger them, which makes it so that you get more ult charge, and you waste more time if you do the whole staggering thing. Because people used to do the whole choke point thing, but it's actually very lucrative to just wall them off, not even at a choke point. Because like right here, boom. he would have to move all the way around here to survive. And in Overwatch, you kill so fast that that's just a death sentence. Especially if you have a Mei that's just freezing him the entire time as well. So that's a really good thing. And then also you have this, which is really nice. D.Va can eat it, whatever. But you can stall points, which is nice. You can set up kills. This thing, like I said, does freeze through an entire group of people, as you can see. So that, I think people have kind of forgotten about. And then they also made it so that right-click doesn't have any fall-off damage, which is nice as well. So I kind of consider this as like an anti-tank, anti-dive. It's really nice. I really like main comps, and my team's found a lot of success with it. We didn't even drop a map the last time. We tried it out in our matches. Because we were just kind of like fed up and we were like, okay, we need to figure out something else. So we tried this Mei strat. It works really well. You just wall off behind them as they're running towards you, or split them up the middle and take one side or the other, and you freeze and go. It's pretty simple. Like I said, I really like this. Pharah, I would say pure damage. Reaper, damage. Soldier, you do get a health pack, but Sombra's a utility hero as well, and this is like the whole idea behind the Sombra dive, is the team will actually let the Sombra call the dive, because Sombra is invisible, can scout, do everything. Basically what she'll do is in a dive she'll paint a picture, and this is basically the best way I can explain it. Let's say my team's behind this corner right here, and they're ready to dive anywhere in here, or they're like right here. Now, usually in a dive, if you're like Winston, you would peek out, and you would look, and you're like, okay, they're right there, this guy right there, okay, oh, right there, and then they dive all the way over there. That's great. That's how dive has been run for like 2 years now, 2 or 3 years. I'm coming up to 3 years. But yeah, that's how dive's been ran. So how do you go about doing it with a Sombra dive? Well, usually in a dive you peek, of course, to actually scout out. You're scouting out and you're figuring out where you're going to dive before you even start. You want to know where you're landing as a team and where's the best way to go. And in the Sombra dive, no one has to peek, because Sombra's in the back. She goes, okay, we have Prime Training Bot on my on me. And you just say like on me, and so they're like, oh, we see your outline through the walls, so we'll dive. And then they're like, okay, and Sombra goes, okay, dive 3, 2, 1, and then boom, you just obliterate, and then you move on from there, and you just go through and you just destroy them. That's basically how the Sombra dive works. And then of course you hack targets that are trying to get away. You hack targets that might have ult. So for example, like a Zen, you could do a you could solo EMP the Zen, kill the Zen. You can EMP right on the Zen, or if you know the Zen has his ultimate and you've been tracking with your team, you can do this maneuver where you go in, and instead of shooting at them upon dive, you're like, okay, dive 3, 2, 1. And so as they start to dive, the Zen is hacked. And so in that case, it's different. And one thing I do want to point out, because this occurs, is timing with the Sombra. So let's say we're going into a dive. What you want to do is you want to gauge when they're going to land. You want them to start jumping when you say 1. So in some cases, you're going to want, and basically in all cases, you're going to want to hack before they land, or start shooting before, well, not before, after or right as they land. So for example, 3, 2, 1, Winston comes down, lands, boom, and then we're in. So you want Winston to be the first one in. Basically, in any dive, you want the tank to be the first one because they have the most health, and the first target is always the first person that lands. No matter who they reprioritize to, they're never going to go, hey, there's a tank coming at my face. I'm going to shoot the guy that's lagging behind him. It's not going to happen. So what you want to do in many scenarios is you want to lag behind. Because if, for example, like 3, 2, 1, Winston starts coming, you uncloak, you start shooting, the Winston lands, and you kill everyone. That's the idea that some people think, but what occurs is they'll actually turn and look at you because you're the first one that shows up, and you will die, or you'll have to recall. If many of you Sombra players actually realize that you have to recall right as you engage, that basically means that you are recalling pretty much... Well, recalling is bad, or translocating. It's translocating, not recalling. Translocating is technically bad in a dive, and it's because you are pretty much semi-killed. You're out of the fight, you're not helping anyone out, and so what you want to do is you want to try to not have that occur, but at the same time, you still use it. You still have to use it, but you don't want to actually use it. So just always keep that in mind, is you want to be the last one to land, and everything will be great. So yeah, coordinating stuff, figuring out things. Basically, the utility is you can prevent ultimates from even occurring if you hack them pre-fight, or if you do other stuff. Symmetra, of course, you have our teleporters. You have our turrets, which can be used as location tools. So let's do a good example like here. So we have one here, we have one here, and we have one here. So what's happening is I see an orange dot, and that means someone's being damaged here, so someone's over here. I have another orange dot somewhere. Right here. So that means someone's getting damaged there, and so that means we know that there's people moving in that direction. So having this spread out like turrets is pretty good. As well as you can use your barrier. You're like, okay, guys, we need to initiate. Boom, barrier, and then the team just kind of like waddles in between. But yeah, so you pretty much use Symmetra as a group. It's a group movement tactic, and there's many ways to actually run with a Symmetra. A Symmetra Goats is very viable, or a tank comp with Symmetra, because you basically run around and you play a dive. You can play a dive with Symmetra's teleporter. You're like, okay, ready, get the bot there, 3, 2, 1, boom, and then you're on them. They can't really do much about that, and you can get straight through some shields if you want to, and it's pretty easy. There's like ways you can flank around major choke points. People are starting to use it against goats counters, to kind of get in their blind spots, all that stuff. Yeah, you can use all of those, which is really nice. Torbjorn falls under the same bracket. His turret basically is a zoning. So for example, if we are holding up on the high ground here and the flank is right here, I put down a turret here, and what happens is if a tracer tries to come around a flank, the turret's in her face and she's gonna get shot at. That's pretty simple to think about, but then you're like, but how do you know? Well, for sure. Well, Trish has to do one of two things. Either one, she dips, she's like, nope, I'm not going through this. 2, she tries to shoot it and she dies. Woohoo, that's good for you. Or 3, she just destroys the turret. She's awesome, she's the best tracer in the world, she destroys the turret off of the face of the earth. Then you know that the turret is destroyed, and you know that there's a tracer coming up. So you actually have, it's what's called a pre-scouting. So characters that fall under the pre-scouting is, of course, Junkrat because of the trap. We have, of course, the Symmetra because of her turrets, and the Torbjorn because of his turrets. So it's just kind of, you're not actively looking, but something else is actively looking. So that is a good utility. I don't count Widowmaker as a utility because of her, like, info site, all that stuff. Don't really count that. Anna, you can kind of say that her, that the nade is utility, where you basically go, okay, I'm going to nade everyone, and they can't get healed, and they die. That's viable. Not really too big. I would say it doesn't really completely, like, qualifies, but hey, to each their own. Brig. How long have we been recording? 20 minutes. Not bad. Okay, so Brig is a utility hero, and it's because she doesn't really fall under one role, and that's pretty much with all of these heroes under the classes. They don't really fall under one role, but they do something interesting. So, like, Brig is very durable, and she has, of course, her shield bash, all that stuff. So, basically, you're not really... With the latest Brig changes, healing doesn't really matter. The healing buffs, the only thing that really matters with it is in a poke battle, if you're able to, let's say, just do, like, you're in a poke battle and you go, boom, you can heal them up to higher in the poke. Besides that, nothing. There's no sustained buff or anything like that in the mid-fight. It's pretty basic. Your shield bash goes from 50 damage to 5, which is pretty depressing, but you also can't go through barriers, which is super depressing. So now the only ones that can actually stun through barriers is Doomfist and Reinhardt. So those two are the only ones that can stun through barriers now. And so what it does basically at this moment is she can't be used in the same way that she was before in GOATS, where you did the stun shatter. That's an issue. I do know that there's a way that you can do a stun, and then you stop at the shield, and you turn towards a Reinhardt, and you can boop him to the side. That is a way. It's a little more difficult, and probably not always that useful. But it's a thing you can use. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. I honestly think that a basic 3 support comp might just be a thing without Brig. But there is one thing that still gives Brig a lot of power, and it's because of her shield. Because she actually takes space. This is her utility side of her, part of your utility side. The stun was utility just because she was a stun. It was a stun on a support / tank, whatever. But the shield basically means she is a 750 hit point target, not as a tank or anything like that. And because of her shield, she's not given any ult charge, which basically means she can scout in 2 different ways. One, she can scout by doing this, peeking corners, or she can actually scout by even looking. So this whole utility of an extra Reinhardt-like shield without actually using Reinhardt's shield, because Reinhardt's shield has bigger and better things to do sometimes. So it does have its utility. Ultimate-wise, it's just the same. But just like this shield, the idea is you would use it to get into positions that you normally wouldn't be able to get into, or block off different things that are difficult. So like, let's say there Reinhardt has Earth Shatter, and the Diva bombs behind you. What do? If you were playing just a Rein, the Rein would have to pick, do I block the Diva bomb, or do I block the Earth Shatter? What do I do? Well, in the other case, you have a Brig. Brig blocks one, you block the other. Pretty simple. So it's pretty basic there, and yeah, you could use, like, you are able to use Zarya's bubble. So you can bubble yourself and get into position and stuff like that. So, yeah, you have a lot of options. Because bubble does do that as well. It blocks the stuff. Other utility, I actually consider Lucio utility because of his speed boost, which, of course, everyone knows is the backbone behind close range comps getting into position. That's basically you use him to move an entire team forward. Pretty much the original utility hero, and is pretty nice. You can get into weird positions, do stuff like that. There are many different options, and that boops on a 4-second cooldown, which is super good. Of course, you can heal and all that stuff. Up to you. Mercy, damage boosts, good for you. I don't really think that much. You can use damage boost in some utility ways to get a one-shot headshot with Ashe. Moira, you can actually use her orb to like track and see. We just threw it down that hallway. We got nothing as it bounced through the hallway, which means we have no bad guys in the hallway. Pretty simple stuff there. Of course, Discord we can use to actually keep track of people behind walls. So we know that they're moving in this direction. That's helpful. Of course, damage boost is great. Damage with Zen's okay. Healing through walls is nice too. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Yeah. So yeah, doing that for 3 seconds is pretty nice. Not really much of a utility hero in respect to anyone else, because in many cases a utility hero has an ability in which it's good enough to actually play, and you use it for that ability to do something. So Sombra is to control ultimates, hack prime targets, as well as scouting out the back. Junkrat and Torbjorn are to cut off areas and to control where people are coming from. Same thing with Torbjorn's ultimate. Symmetra, of course, does a similar thing, and then also has, of course, Teleporter, which can teleport an entire team, get a Bastion back on the payload. All that stuff is pretty good. And then, of course, you have, like, Brig, which has her shield and stuff like that, which is really nice. And then, of course, Shield Bash is still pretty good, but you just can't go through barriers. Lucio for booping. All really good stuff. So, I'm going to open up to questions, because now I'm going to actually talk about, like, ideal comps and why a utility hero is good. So during that, I'll actually pick up questions. So, like, why a utility hero is good is because it has a niche. And the niche is created by the players, not based on, like, the map necessarily. So sometimes, yeah, map-specific does help out. But in many cases, you can create it through the players through strategy. And this is where Overwatch goes from being a fun game where you just pew-pew at each other and you get kills and you win. It's a little more involved rather than just having, like, a soldier that's just like, oh, I just kill everyone. That's my strategy. Or an Ashe where it's just like, I kill everyone. The idea is you're using your entire team as a unity, and you are coming up with a different way to actually go about winning the game. So you're not picking Mei for her damage. You're not. You are picking her for her utility as a hero. So you pick her so that she can freeze enemies. If they're diving onto you, she can peel by freezing. That's something that people forget, is Mei can actually peel for people. Very much like an off-tank would. And of course she freezes any tank. And in a tank v tank matchup, it's basically built on which tank can actually do something. So if the Mei is freezing the other tank, then whoops. You're not really pointing at trying to get kills. If anything, you're not really trying to kill them as fast as you actually are going to. You are trying to set up for your team. And so that's kind of like the whole support idea. You're the Swiss Army knife. You can still do damage, but you have a utility to do other stuff. So, like, in this case, boom. Blocked off what you wanted to do. Boom. Get an easy double kill. All that kind of stuff is pretty nice. And of course you need communication with your team, so you can do the old wall off Hanamura strat. But like I said as well, you don't have to do it just on Hanamura. People kind of pigeonhole it to you have to use a choke point because it prevents them from getting out, period. A lot of times they're mobile enough that if they are able to, they'll just fly over. But you want that split second of, oh crap, there's a wall behind me and I didn't notice. So, all good. And then point control is really great. Like I said, in GOATS, we basically ran it against the dive comp. People would dive in. I noticed, because I was playing Zarya at the time, what would occur is that like the other GOATs would come at us, and we would, as they were coming in, we would wall off behind them, and then we would get into a fight like this. Now, you can say like, oh, the Rhine should just put up his barrier, and at that point, everything slows down. That's how you slow down a fight, is you force the Rhine to actually get into a position where he has to have his barrier up. And so when the Rhine doesn't have that option of dropping his barrier, then things slow down because it's up to everyone behind him. And of course, barriers get damaged and drop. And Mei is not that bad at damaging barriers as well, because she does damage. So basically, like, we would, of course, wall behind him, and then we would just freeze them. And during this time, I was playing Zarya, of course, and that just gave me just a ton of free ult charge, because I would just burn through the tanks. And yeah, they could be healing them, but we were just freezing the tanks. The tanks couldn't get any value because they couldn't move during that entire time. And of course, we were body blocking, we were bubbling, we were doing all this stuff to protect the Mei. So it just actually makes it very nice for the Mei itself. Sombra dives are just about setups, controlling the enemy as well. There's not really a lot of mid-fight value, but it's a lot about character value itself. So you know, like, you keep track of who's prime targets and all that kind of stuff, and what needs to be killed and what needs to be hacked and all that. And so it's pretty nice. Anything else with Sombra pretty much is just basic. Everyone's using her like you would think you would use her in that utility class. I honestly think Doomfist might be crouching up on the utility class, mainly just because there's a power gap in the stunning shield wars. Hey, thanks for the follow, Guac. Yeah, like we can still stun through shields where Brig couldn't, and it's on a 4-second cooldown. So people forget that. I think we might be seeing a more passive Doomfist. The only problem is of course Brig had a lot more survivability. Doomfist really doesn't, but I see eventually a passive Doom being a thing. Symmetra strats, of course, moving entire goats to the high ground. Once they fix the stupid teleport glitch thing, I think Blizzard overthought teleporting in general, because like you have Reaper, and so the idea is like, oh, I'll show you Reaper. I'm going off on a tangent. We're going on a teleport tangent. We have a Reaper, and if you notice, it tries to lock on to a ground. And I would really like them to just not really. I would think it would be pretty decent if teleport worked like Doomfist's ult did, or even just remove this style in general, because this is always like inconsistent. Because yeah, it's aiming towards crosshair, but sometimes the ground just doesn't pick up completely. So things are just always weird. Like right here, if we try, yeah, trying, come on, yeah. You can just see it flickers, and it's because it doesn't like that whole piece. And so I think Blizzard really needs to rework the teleporting. Now back on track. So yeah, of course, Symmetra, you have
The true enemy of humanity is disorder.
You have,
Teleporter online. We move swiftly.
yeah, you have the teleporting bomb. Bomb teleport. But yeah, you can push an entire goat. I do like the idea of throwing like an Orisa barrier, up to like the teleporter. So like this way, boom. Then we put a teleporter like right there. and it protects the teleporter as we put it up. We go through and we have a barrier on the other side. That's pretty nice as well, because I imagine that burning down that would be pretty interesting. You're looking at my YouTube? Thanks, man. Looking at your YouTube right now, and there's so much good stuff there. I'll be sure to watch it. Thanks, man. I have a coaching tab, ton of strat chats. I think this is going to end up being strat chat 29? I'm not sure. But yeah, this thing I do every single week. We go through all this stuff, wide range of stuff, and a lot of times we're talking about metas that are going to come in the future. Like, I believe over 6 months ago we talked about what's now called goats. So yeah, I'm thinking a May symmetric comp is eventually going to show up, just because I think utility is going to get more value as the whole damage side goes down. Because I think eventually there's going to be a point where you're not going to have to worry about having an Ashe. You don't need to worry about getting the kills that fast. You're actually worrying about out-sustaining and getting an edge over the fight. And so I think, honestly, moving like a Symmetra around with a Mei, getting an entire group together, I think versions of that will come up. We're already seeing stuff with Symmetra. I think Mei is just around the corner. But yeah, we're going through there. Lucio. Lucio's Lucio. Lucio is pretty much Lucio. It's pretty basic. You can do all the booping and stuff like that. He pretty much has any place in speed boosting as well. Brig. This is kind of interesting. I see Brig coming in to, like, because I'm trying to figure out where she falls out of. I honestly don't think she completely falls out of goats. I just think that what might occur is that there's better options, like, of course, Mei. But, of course, healing is pretty good to just kind of get that whole control down. So it's kind of interesting. I think I would have to test more. That's the one that's a little awkward. It's because finding a place for her, because she's one that she can be really bad or really good. Because if you're relying on her as a healer, it's not going to happen. Especially since they haven't really buffed healing to the point of where you're like, yeah, it's actually now usable as a healer. Nothing changed. She's not going to fall under the healer class, and I honestly think it starts with the E ability, because repair pack they need to fix up. I think they might need to lower down her self barrier or something like that, but I think like her health pack needs to be able to be thrown out a lot more consistently, so you can actually throw it out a lot more. And I think if you're able to throw it out, let's say every 3 seconds, and have it do the same amount of healing, but have it charge up over time. So not really like instant, but more like I can't remember. Does Ana do like that anymore? Yeah, kind of like that. So have her heal like Ana. Having like that E do the burst heal just like Ana, so that it's not really that instant. That's what I would like with Brig. I think the damage on her shield bash is good. I honestly think that's probably the best thing about her. But I think she just needs more healing utility and less tanking utility, because it's kind of a good mix, but there's stuff missing with her, and it's because Blizzard's wanting her to be out of the meta more than they want her to actually be interesting. I think there's a different philosophy from what they did with Brig and what they did with D.Va. D.Va was, we don't want her out of the meta, we just don't want her to feel like you're getting just destroyed all the time. We don't want you to feel bad about yourself when you're playing her. So it's pretty basic there. If anyone has any questions, I'll hang out a little bit. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have right now. I'll just play a couple highlights. But yeah. Is it beneficial to DM an enemy Rhine and goats to prevent healing from Ana if they have one? It depends. It honestly depends. So, in some situations, what's going to happen is you have to do a couple things in a goats comp for a diva. So if you're playing diva and you're in a goats comp, and you're going up against a goats comp, they have no high ground control, nothing. What you're going to want to be doing is doing that to block either an orb, B, fire strike, or any of that stuff is good. In some situations, try to read. Like if they're going to use Zarya ult, that's a good one to read. But of course, there's also stuff with Ana with her nade. I think nade's like number one. But like to DM specifically an enemy Rhine and goats because of an Ana popping healing into him, yeah, that's pretty viable if you're trying to like burn him down. So if, for example, if you're running like the Zen version where you stun the Rhine and you burn him down immediately, defense matrixing him won't really matter because you're doing burst damage. It can be in some situations, but besides that, not that much. Another case is for defense matrixing directly on the Ana. Another one is if they grab you, you want to be defense matrixing at the beginning, cut out in the middle, and then defense matrix at the end. Because what's going to occur is at the beginning, you're going to get grabbed, a bunch of crap's going to come your way. But then either at the beginning or the end, it doesn't really happen much in the middle. The Ana's going to try to throw a nade on you, and you're going to want to catch that nade. So just being aware of the Ana in general and just blocking a ton of stuff she's doing is very lucrative. But Ana's healing in general doesn't really do that much in a burst environment. If you're Rhine, and on the other side of it is if all you have, like let's say you only have the Diva and the Rhine on your side and a Rhine and an Ana on their side, yeah, defense matrix all the way. Because you're going to want to remove Ana's value. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. That's a good question. Okay, cool. Let me play one more, and then I'll sign off the recording. Maybe stay on stream if you have any more questions. Okay, I'm gonna sign off on recording. So anyone on YouTube, anyone on Twitch, I do these live every Friday at 3:30 Mountain Standard Time, and then I also do them. I do other live streams on Twitch as well. Post these all up to YouTube. I do different things on Twitch and on YouTube, of course. All that stuff is wide ranging. The only thing that is consistent is I post updates to everything on my Twitter. It's DRYD3N001. So I give information there for when streams are, what streams are talking about, any different thing that I'm working on. So yeah. Thank you, everyone. See ya.